They say patience is a virtue. Well, then I'm virtuous because it was worth the wait. Southern Miss Golden Eagles head coach Charles Huff, Locked On Sunbelt.
You are Locked On Sunbelt, your daily podcast on the Sunbelt Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $250 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Really could make this interview 2 episodes. So a little bit behind inside football, as the case may be. Come up with anywhere from a half a dozen to a dozen questions and then play off the answers of the interviewee. That was not the case this time. I may have asked 6 questions total. You can count them. All right. It wasn't very many because Southern Miss Golden Eagles head coach Charles Huff was very forthcoming in many different things and sometimes forthcoming on questions I did not ask. Starting out with, why didn't Braylon Braxton start the season as the starting quarterback for the Thundering Herd last year? Interesting and fascinating. More along the lines of fascinating. Wait to hear his answer on that one. We did talk about the discussion of him and his wife about not extending in Marshall and why they decided to do what they did. They had a little bump in the road with the Georgia Southern ball game. They gave that one away. He said that Georgia Southern beat them. They didn't have any issues saying that, but he said that was the turning point of the season. They will be hosting Mississippi State, so he has their attention. He doesn't need to worry about any letdown opening the season with a lesser opponent. And, of course, tonight, Michael Green is going to get drafted. So he talks about how great a player and person Michael Green is. This is going to be one of the all-time great Locked On Sunbelts. He is the head coach, new head coach of the Southern Miss Golden Eagles, and he is Charles Huff, and he is Locked On Sunbelt. Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Sunbelt, your teams every day. We finally got him. He finally has got some time for Locked On Sunbelt. He's come on many times before. He is the new head coach of Southern Miss Golden Eagles. He is Charles Huff. Coach, it's been a minute. I could say congrats on the new gig. Congrats on the Sunbelt Championship. You've got a lot going on. How you been?
Well, it's been great, man. Obviously, it's been a whirlwind of emotions and tone setting and new job and new landscape. But it's been good, man. It's been good. It's a breath of fresh air. I'm rejuvenated. Obviously, the grind of the season when you're, every game is the difference in winning a championship and not, and trying to manage all of the things that come with that. I'm blessed, happy to be here, happy for, where we are, happy from where we're come from. We got a lot of work to do, but the excitement is really high.
Now, I don't want to relitigate the whole thing, although I will thank you for the 2 weeks of content that you provided Locked On Sunbelt. It's all about me.
It was not intentional on my part, I promise you.
I'm sure it wasn't. But I do want to talk about, because somewhere in there, when I realized you didn't have a contract at Marshall, so I understood what you were doing, somewhere along the way you had to have a conversation with the boss, and I'm not talking about the AD. I'm talking about the other Coach Huff, your lovely wife. Somewhere along the way, there had to be a heart-to-heart. You realize what we're doing here. We are rolling the proverbial dice, and it turned out the quarterback situation worked out. You end up winning the division, winning the Sunbelt Championship, and you land on your feet at Southern Miss. But somewhere along the way, and you're a coach because you always know it can go the other way. What was that conversation like with your wife, knowing what you were kind of rolling the dice, heading into the season and then mid-season with Marshall, and then landing on your feet at Southern Miss?
Yeah, we're a family of faith, so we just believe in doing things the right way, and things work out. We felt good about the plan. She trusts me in my decision making. When we decided to become a family and get married, she's fully aware of the ups and downs of coaching. Obviously, with her having her past in it. She trusts that, hey, you're going to go to work every day and do the best you can, and the good Lord takes care of the rest. We had built something really special there, in the 4 years working toward, that final year at Marshall. And she said, hey, what do you need me to do? And she took care of the home, which made it a lot easier to go to work and grind and put ourselves in position to be successful. She's phenomenal. I tell you, I don't know how the good Lord blessed me with such a wonderful partner, wife, mother, our kids. Obviously, with her being a coach, her motivation, her understanding is big. So it was good. We never really talked about, what if. We just, knew we had to win, which is the same goal every season. And she showed up at the games and cheered. And what do we got to do to get ready for next week?
We're talking with Charles Huff, the head coach of the Southern Miss Golden Eagles, Locked On Sunbelt, your teams every day. All right, so let's talk a little bit about last season. A little bit of a roller coaster. We had one quarterback, then we went to the other quarterback. What into the decisions to go with one quarterback and then eventually, stay with Braylon Braxton, who led you to the Sunbelt Championship?
Yeah, I'll give, Locked On Sunbelt something that a lot of people never knew. At the beginning of the season, I had a conversation with Braylon before we played any game. And I told him, I said, I'll be honest with you. I think we have a team that can win the championship. I said, in order for us to win the championship, we're going to have a mobile quarterback. I think in this league, a mobile quarterback fixes a lot of problems because obviously we can't pay for, recruit, or get the best of the best, at every position. And a mobile quarterback causes defenses issues. And I told Braylon, I said, this is how it's going to go. You're not going to start the season. I said, but when we get to conference play, you're going to be the starter and you're going to carry us to the championship. The first conference game was App State, and the rest is history. Everyone thinks that, you didn't know what quarterback to play. My fear was, and which is always, is we can play Braylon Braxton against Ohio State, and whether we win that game or we don't win that game, that has no bearing on winning a Sun Belt championship.
Right.
We can play Braylon Braxton against Virginia Tech, and whether we win that game or don't win that game has no bearing on us winning a conference championship. The only thing that comes out of that is we win the game, fans are excited for a week, we lose in conference, and, the season's, you didn't do well. We had the exact same scenario the year before. We go down, we play NC State, our quarterback gets hurt, our starting running back gets hurt, and we lose 3 games in a row in conference. Ruined the season. Everyone patted us on the back for, man, you guys played NC State really well. It was so close of a game. Well, Rasheen Ali's out with a high ankle sprain for 3 games. Cam Fancher, our quarterback at that time, has got a cracked rib, and he's, kind of battling to try and play the rest of the season. So I learned the only thing that can happen in those games is good players get hurt, and that affects your whole season. So I knew the way that Braylon plays is he uses his legs, he runs. Well, him running and getting 8 yards and getting hit by an Ohio State football player, probably not the best decision from a health standpoint.
Sure.
Same thing with Virginia Tech. Now, were we going in those games saying, hey, we're going to lose? No, we felt like our other quarterback gave us just as good of a chance to win, as Braylon would have. And I told him that, and this was in August. I said, this is what's going to happen. We're going to get to conference play, and you're going to be the guy. He gets to conference play, and App State comes out and has a showing. Everybody's like, oh, you found your quarterback. No, I found him in December. I knew exactly what we were going to do, had the conversation with him and his family, had the conversation with the other quarterback. Now, what happened was we ended up, the other quarterback, Stone, ended up playing well in, the Ohio State game, played well in the Western Michigan game. So when we got to Georgia State, it was kind of like Braylon's played well, Stone's played well. We kind of went based off that week of practice with who was going to start. We knew we were going to play them both. But that was the decision in August. Like, everyone's like, well, you didn't even know who your no, I knew exactly who our quarterback was going to be. I knew what a mobile quarterback in this league could do. That's why Braylon was not concerned with all of the noise of, well, he didn't even start you to begin. I told him, you're not going to start because I don't want you to get hurt. And I feel like ultimately the distance, you're going to be able to help us. I feel like Stone was as capable of us winning as many games as we did, pre making the switch. Stone was aware of it. Now, and we told Stone, hey, look, if you go out here and you're playing just lights out, no, we're not going to switch you. But this was a decision back in August. Everyone talks about, Coach Saban making this decision in the championship game with Tua and Jalen Hurts, and he made a decision. Coach made that decision weeks before then. It was weeks of Tua getting in games and doing well. It was weeks of Tua having really good practice sessions. Just that moment is what the world saw. So it made it very easy for Braylon to trust me because I told him up front, it worked out. He ended up being player of the year. And again, those are a lot of things that go on in the building, in the locker room that fans don't necessarily know. And there's some things that, the reality of it is fans don't need to know at the time, but that's where it all started. I feel the exact same way. I feel you can win this league with a mobile quarterback. Now, Braylon has throwing ability. He can throw the ball. He can, make all the checks and all those things. But his greatest asset, the equalizer, is his legs. And when you can't go out and get 5-star O linemen across the board and you can't get every position, you got to have an equalizer. And for Braylon, that's what it is. And he's been great. His family's been great. The reality of it is I believe in being honest with players. I learned from the other 3 years that if you have your best players, you got a chance to win a lot of games in this league. You can't predict injuries, at every position. And the reality of it is they happen. But I think there is some head coach awareness to probably going out and playing. I said it the week of the game. Everybody laughed at me because I was offering them Tudor's biscuits. That was the best team I'd ever seen. Like, these guys are like machines. Like, let's not ruin our entire season by playing one of our better players when we have a guy just as capable. And and Stone went out and did some really good things. So it was just part of it. That was the turnaround, which was that App State game, and I thought Braylon managed it well. The whole first 4 games of the season or whatever it was, he was preparing. He was as good of a teammate as could have been. We told the entire team that's what we were going to do. Not to say, hey, we're going out to lose, but hey, look, guys, we have to make some decisions. And we did that at other positions as well. Some of our receivers came on towards the back end of the year, and we told them, hey, you're probably not going to have as many reps in the beginning of the year because you're still developing. But as this thing turns, you're going to be a major piece. Doc Chapman was one of those guys who was a major piece in the back half of our season. So I'm not the smartest man in the world, but I do learn from mistakes. And I learned that in this league, you have to try and keep your best players healthy. And then you have to develop guys as the season goes on.
Let's take a timeout. We'll come back, continue our fascinating conversation with new Southern Miss head coach Charles Huff. He talks about having Braylon Braxton buy into what he wanted to do last year. He talks about the Georgia Southern game being the turning point of the season and the culture change and how much the players coming with him help him with that. We'll do that right after I tell you about FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. I love how FanDuel makes betting so easy, whether it's picking my favorite team or diving into player props. From three-pointers to steals to assists, FanDuel has so many ways to bet your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. All right, Dave Schultz, Lockdown Sunbelt, your teams every day. Continue our conversation with the new head coach of the Southern Miss Golden Eagles. He will get to it eventually, talking about how bringing players with him from Marshall to Southern Miss has helped change that culture in Hattiesburg. We're talking with Coach Charles Huff, Southern Miss Golden Eagles. So I find that conversation what you just said fascinating, because I asked Butch Jones a couple of years ago, why didn't you start Jalen Raynor to begin with? And then he reminded me, well, we're going up against the Texas Longhorns. Maybe that's not the best spot for a true freshman to begin his college career, because we don't want to get him killed, right?
Correct.
And so it takes two to tango, Coach. Obviously, I would see the end result, but Braylon's got to be pretty mature to hear those words. You're not going to play until we get into Sun Belt Conference play. A lot of young players don't want to hear that, but obviously he handled it well.
Yeah, I think that speaks to who he is. I think that speaks to who his family is. And he understood it. I didn't, spin it as, hey, you suck, you're not going to play.
Right.
It's, hey, you're going to play, but you're going to really take the reins of this thing. And he played in every game, but you're going to take the reins of this thing once we get into conference play, because you have an equalizer that I want you to use, that I want you to be comfortable using. I don't want to yell out there against, Ohio State, hey, don't run, get down, no, throw it away. I don't want to take away your equalizer. I want you to go play free. I want you to go play confident. And that's what he did. And that just, again, that speaks to, like you said, his maturity. That speaks to his understanding of the big picture, not just the moment. I think sometimes in where college football is today, we don't give the kids enough credit. They understand how things work. You just got to be honest with them. Now, if we'd have just kind of went through the season and, kind of the elephant in the room, we didn't address it. Yeah, you're going to get some animosity, or you're going to get some anxiety. But if you're straight up and honest up front, here's our plan. Here's what we think is going to work. And I asked him, what do you think? He said, I trust you, coach. So I think, again, that's, obviously where college football is. It's a little bit cloudy on, being honest with kids. But I think when you're honest and direct, and they know they can still create value for themselves. And I told them, I said, you going out and winning the game against, one of these Power 4 schools, it will be a week's worth of enjoyment. But if we don't do well this season, no one's going to remember that. And that's what I wanted to make sure that as a team and as an organization, we understood the goal is to win the conference championship. If we do that, then we will get the benefits of whatever comes next, whether that's playoffs, whether that's bowl game, whether that's everyone, getting the accolades that they deserve. He won newcomer of the year. He didn't win the P4, newcomer of the year winner. He won the newcomer of the year and probably enters the year as the top quarterback in this league. So I think, again, holistically, he created a lot of value for himself, and it worked out for all of us.
Talking to Charles Huff, head coach of the University of Southern Miss Golden Eagles. Okay, so you did have a little bump in there. We skipped. You went from App State to Georgia State. We had a little bump in there. That was Georgia Southern.
Yeah, it was Georgia Southern, actually, yeah.
Yeah, but okay, but that's okay because, I watched that game numerous times, all right? And it's got to be excruciating for you to go back and watch that film. How did we get past, as a team, how did you get past that? Because you did come out and beat Georgia State the next week, because there's losses and then there's losses. That was a tough one to swallow.
Yeah, I think it was the best thing that happened to us in the entire year, because it reinforced a few things. One, it reinforced we talk about finishing. We talk about, dominating the competition for 60 minutes. And it reinforced that you have to do that. You have to finish games. You have to dominate the competition for 60 minutes. You can't play for, 49 or 58 and a half or whatever it is. The other thing it reinforced to me was you got to trust your plan. The plan was to play Braylon once we got in the conference play. We were in a situation where both of those guys had played really well. We started with one guy, we switched to Braylon. From a coaching standpoint, you look back and, hindsight, if you did something different. But I look at that, and we looked at that as a team as the best thing that could have happened to us the entire year, because it forced us to learn that you have to finish. I think because of that game, we ended up winning the JMU game at the end of the year, where we were down. We knew we still had better execution in us. We knew we still had more in the tank. And we go into the half at 17-0, where most people think this game is over and, Marshall's going to miss out on an opportunity to go to the conference championship, all the above. But the loss at Georgia Southern gave us the mindset of we have to play 60 minutes. They have to play us for 60 minutes. So I think it's the best thing that happens. Sometimes, you've heard the old adage, you learn more in a failure than sometimes you do in winning. And we learned a lot from that game. Take nothing away from Georgia Southern. They beat us. There was no,
they had a lot of help.
They beat us. Well, they beat us. I mean, we turned the ball over.
You gave them the ball numerous times.
No doubt. We turned the ball over, and we talk about taking care of the football, finishing games, playing 60 minutes, and all of those things we did not do in that moment. And Georgia Southern took advantage of it. Coach Helton is a phenomenal coach. He's got good players. But it taught us everything we needed to know to win a championship. We knew based on a 4-year, progression and culture and all that, we knew how to win. We needed to know how to win a championship. And there is a difference. And that moment, that game helped us. And I knew when we went in the locker room after the game that was going to be more of a positive than a negative by just the response, the aura, the look in the guys' eyes in the locker room after that game. It hurt, but it was not detrimental. It was not catastrophic. It was, we let the game slip away and a good opponent took advantage of our slip-ups. So we can't let any other game slip away. We can't let any other practice the rest of this year slip away. We can't let any other meeting. We can't let any other decision that we make slip away. And that was the look in the eyes of the guys when we went in the locker room. And I knew from that moment on that we would have a chance to be successful. Again, I'm not sitting here saying I'm Nostradamus and, I knew we were going to win it. I'm not saying that, but I knew that we had learned the lesson that we needed to learn in that moment, and it would help us down the road.
Talking to Charles Huff, the head coach of Southern Miss Golden Eagles, Locked On Sunbelt, your teams every day. All right, so let's move forward. Let's move on to Southern Miss. It's a different time. So when a coach comes in and says we're going to change the culture, it's one thing. Well, you brought a lot of guys from Marshall to Southern Miss who know what the culture is. How much easier is it with a head coach? You didn't bring a couple. You got a whole bunch of them. How much easier is it when the players are telling their teammates what the culture is? That helps you not have to be the head coach all the time when they got their peers telling them what it's about.
Yeah, it's the world of difference. I don't know. And if I didn't feel confident that, a good bit of our players or a good bit of our culture would come with us, I'm not sure I would take the job. Because obviously, you're talking 1-11 and it's more than just, not executing. It's a lot of underlying issues that you got to clean up, a culture change. We talk about flipping the script, and that's not just the record, it's everything. It's, you got to flip the script on how you practice. You got to flip the script on how you recruit. You got to flip the script on discipline, all of those things. But bringing in so many guys, it's almost like we have the same team in different colors, because we would have lost, 20 guys to graduation, 15, 16 guys to graduation. And you would still have a core of guys who know how we practice, know how we meet, know how we conduct ourselves. So it's been a light years of difference. I look back now and I understand why Coach Cignetti was able to have so much success in year one at Indiana. Because when you bring so many guys that understand your culture, understand what we'll go for, what we ain't going for, understand how we do things. The biggest thing when you take over a program that has not won is changing the mindset, so flipping the script on the mindset. Our guys are walking around this building like they're conference champions. And that's not a cockiness or we're good. It's, we have to defend our championship. We have to defend what we've put out. We have to go out and work every day because we've tasted success. We've won a championship. We know what it takes to get there. And what happens is all kids want to win, right? No one wants to be 1-11.
Sure.
So the other guys that are here that were at other places or that was here at Southern Miss before, they gravitate towards that championship aura or that championship swagger. And to me, it's a humble approach. It's not, hey, we're pounding our chest. It's no, we got to get extra work in. It's no, we got to make sure today's practice is the best practice. No, we got to meet. No, we got to come in and get extra meeting time in. We got to make sure we're taking care of our bodies. No, we don't do dumb stuff in the community anymore. We're going to make sure we're conducting ourselves the right way. And the guys gravitate to that culture. So it makes it a lot easier because you're not trying to get, 105 new guys to do something they can't see. Right. It's basically follow these guys because they know what I'm expecting. They know what this means. So follow those guys. So it's been great, and we've obviously, we hired some coaches from some other places that brought some of their former players with them as well. And you have a respect, when you've won a championship, like guys like respect it. If you went to the Philadelphia Eagles, you're going to follow these guys. These guys just won the Super Bowl. I'm going to do what Saquon's doing. I'm going to do what Jalen's doing. Like if they say we're meeting because obviously this is what it takes to win. So it's been good. It's been good because from a coaching perspective, I'm able to focus a lot more on, building the infrastructure needed to win as far as helping in the community, raising funds, dealing with the administration, working things in that nature. And the locker room is taking care of itself. And that's a positive or a comfort that as a head coach you need, because when you walk into a new locker room, you don't know if, guys are cutting corners. You don't know if guys really understand what it takes to win. But when the locker room takes care of itself, it makes the head coaching job a little bit easier.
Let's take one more timeout. We'll come back, wrap up our conversation with new head football coach of the Southern Miss Golden Eagles, Charles Huff. He talks about how important football is in the South and that culture change for him, moving from Huntington down to Mississippi. He talks about starting the season off with Mississippi State. He's got the players' attention right away. Then Jackson State is a defending conference champion. And, of course, later on today, Thursday night, Michael Green, defensive end, led the nation in sacks, is expected to get drafted in the NFL's first round. Talks about it as a player, and he talks about him as a person. We'll do that after I tell you about Amazon Fire Stick. Did you know that Fire TV is an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices and no console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe or sign into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty, Black Ops 6, and Avowed as easily as you stream your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. Get the latest technology for elevated playing. With Wi-Fi 6, 6E, and auto low latency mode advanced technology, Fire TV Stick 4 TV delivers smoother, more responsive gameplay with lightning-fast speeds you need to stay competitive. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K, 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max, 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube, 3rd Gen. All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your teams every day. Continuing and wrapping up our conversation with the new head football coach of the Southern Miss Golden Eagles, Charles Huff, talks about the culture change and the culture down in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. Talks about opening up the season against Mississippi State and Jackson State. Didn't want to overlook them. And Michael Green, the defensive end, led the nation in sacks, expected to be drafted in the first round in tonight's NFL draft. He is the coach of the Southern Miss Golden Eagles. He is Charles Huff, and he is Locked On Sunbelt. Talking to Charles Huff, head coach of the Southern Miss Golden Eagles. So I find, and I could be wrong, I'm looking from the outside, looking in obviously, that Huntington and Hattiesburg are similar in the fact they have their own strong fan base, right? That they're the Marshall Thundering Herd. They're the Southern Miss Golden Eagles, whereas the Power 5 or Power 4 schools don't necessarily infiltrate, right? Hattiesburg has its own deal. They don't care about the other schools, although they will the first week of the season. And Marshall's the same way with WVU. It's there, but it's different than what it is in Alabama, with Troy and South Alabama, Auburn, and Alabama. Certainly different with the Cajuns that they're consumed with LSU and so forth. So what's it been like there in Hattiesburg? Because it is we just care about Southern Miss, right? I'm sure there's Ole Miss and Mississippi State fans there, but we really do have passion about Southern Miss in Hattiesburg. We're not worried about those other schools.
Yeah, well, football is important in the South. And you can feel that when you walk around. You can feel that, when you're talking to high school coaches, you can feel that just anywhere in the South. And then when you magnify that or you multiply that with a school like Southern Miss that has had success, I think that's where you get that fire or that passion. The beauty of it is, and I think, it's one of those old adages, sometimes you win so much that you forget what it takes to win, and you forget what it feels like, to actually struggle. And I think this community and this fan base has been through the dark years. They have obviously tasted we're not as good as we once were. So they are more eager now and ready to do whatever it takes to get back to those old ways, to get back to winning. And sometimes programs have to go through that. I think sometimes programs are at such a high level and it becomes almost, we win. You're talking about Southern Miss, who used to beat Mississippi State, who used to beat Ole Miss. And then you go through a period where you win one game or you win 3 games. That's not the norm. That's not comfortable. So what we've been able to do is we've been able to bring the excitement, and we've been able to bring a formula that works of what it takes to get back to those winning ways. And because football is important in the South, this community, this administration has been ultra acceptive and willing to do whatever it takes to get back on top. And that's the encouraging piece. Our NIL right now is through the roof. I don't know if I'm a kid in a candy shop, but I'm definitely outside the candy store thinking about what I want to buy when I go in. Sure. But that comes from, again, the landscape it's more important down here. They understand what NIL is. There's more revenue here. There's more generating streams to generate money. Again, when you're talking about just overall support, our ticket sales are through the roof. Obviously, Jeremy, our AD, I call him the whisperer because he must have knew that bringing Mississippi State and Jackson State into our stadium, regardless if they're coming to see the Southern Miss Golden Eagles or the other team, they're going to come, So you talk about driving revenue through the roof, especially with where college football is going. I think it's just a really good time, but it stems from the importance of football in the South. You go to high school football games in the South, it looks like a mini college. Our junior college system here is through the roof. So supporting football is not a foreign or a selective thing in the South. It's what you do. And I think that has been able to help us get this thing going in the right direction.
All right, so you mentioned Mississippi State. I'm not sure there's ever been a bigger ball game in my recollection of a team that won 1 game and a team that won 2 games. But that's what it is. It is Southern Miss hosting Mississippi State. So now I got to go back and ask you what you brought up to begin with. I'm going to presume that Braylon Braxton is going to play against Mississippi State. At least I'm hoping so from a Locked On Sunbelt point of view, because that's a huge ball game. We made a thing about, Jeff Lebby has all this experience, but none of it as a head coach. And he got a Power 5 job, Power 4 job right out of it. And he, so you want to see somebody on the hot seat real fast, going to Hattiesburg and come up short. And yet, again, like you said, technically you're not the defending champion, Southern Miss, but you got most of your team are defending champs. And so you're kicking off the season. I know it's not a Sunbelt game, but probably with the biggest game of the year. This is like Southern Miss is playing like NASCAR. You got Daytona to begin the season.
Well, I will say this. Obviously, it's a big game. Coach Libby is in year 2. So the natural course of being a head coach, putting a program together, he took over an opportunity, a great opportunity where he didn't really get to do it, his way. Some of those players were there, totally different, right? So the expectation is we're not going to see a 2-10 Mississippi State team. So we know we're not. I think they're going to be very competitive in the league. I think they're going to surprise some people because he has done a really good job of building a competitive roster to his schemes and systems. So, no, it is not the Southern Miss Golden Eagles walking in thinking that we're going to just dog race the Mississippi State Bull.
I would think not.
First, I anticipate them being drastically improved. What I want to see from our guys is we're going to get an opportunity to test our culture, test our, say, morals and laws of what we talk about, going out and competing at a high level, not letting the anxiety of game day affect how we prepare. Now, I am a big believer that it does bring a heightened awareness to your preparation all year long when you know you have a very good football team coming in week one. Typically, you're playing a 1AA school or D2, you're playing a lower level school. So you got to kind of self-motivate yourself to get ready for the excitement of the season. Well, we get to multiply that, the excitement of the season. And if we don't do what we need to do, it's going to get ugly. And we can't have that happen, So we have to be able to understand that we're not starting the season with an exhibition game. We're not starting the season, kind of with a cakewalk. I honestly think the first two games of the season for us are going to be probably the toughest, not because anyone else on the schedule is, less of an opponent, but we're new. We've got a blended team, so going out and playing a SEC West football team. Let's not forget what league they're in, which is the best league and the third best league in the world, AFC, NFC, SEC West, period. Okay. And then coming back and playing a defending champion Jackson State team. So we're going to get tested. We're going to find out, there's a lot of excitement, but we still got to carve out the 1-11, here we go again mentality. So they may run the opening kickoff back. How are we going to be able to respond? And then we got to turn around and respond against another championship quality team where Coach Taylor has done a really good job of building a championship roster. So for us, it's the understanding that we're not starting the season with two exhibitions and the third team guy gets ready to play. We're starting the team and we're going to be tested. And we're going to find out really, really early. How do we respond? How do we battle against formidable opponents? So what it should do is it should direct our preparation with a more intent focus. We don't have days to waste. We're playing two quality football teams right out of the gate. So yeah, Braylon's going to start because we need to start with the mindset of this is who we're going to be. Now, the execution will take care of the game, but the mindset in which this season's going to go will be established in those first 2 weeks. And that's kind of our mindset. We have got to prepare because we open the gauntlet. You've seen the movie Get Gladiator. Like there's some things going to come out of that gate that we got to be prepared for.
Sure.
So I'm encouraged by it because I want to be able to test us early because I don't want false hope. Because sometimes you come in, there's a lot of excitement, they've got this new team, and all of a sudden you start the season, 2 or 3-0. And then you run into your formidable opponents, and then all of a sudden you've built up this false confidence. We're going to get tested right out of the gate, which is good because we'll know who we are as we enter Sunbelt play.
All right, let's wrap things up with Charles Huff, head coach of Southern Miss Golden Eagles. Been very generous with his time. Would be remiss. The NFL draft is later on tonight, and Sunbelt is expected to have a first-round pick. Former Marshall Thundering Herd defensive end Michael Green led the nation in sacks. Tell us which fortunate NFL team, what they are going to get with Michael Green.
Yeah, I mean, phenomenal kid, first of all. I mean, he was one of our leaders, actually was our leader on defense. He became kind of the voice, of the team. He was the one guy that would walk up to my office and have real conversations with where the mindset of the team was each week. And a guy who wants to get better every day. I think, and I've talked to a lot of NFL scouts and personnel, obviously throughout this whole process, what Mike does really good. I've been around some really good defensive end. Montez Sweat, when I was at Mississippi State, phenomenal player. Yetur Gross-Matos, when we were at Penn State, phenomenal player. Will Anderson and Dallas Turner. And I put, Montez Sweat and Matos in a different category because they're so long, they're a different body. But I think that Mike Green is more athletic than Will Anderson. Will Anderson's a lot more powerful than Mike. I mean, Will run through a wall and keep running like nothing happened. But Mike's got way better bend and athleticism and get off. What Mike is able to do, which in the NFL you have to do, he can generate pass rush on his own. Like, he doesn't need a stunt or a blitz or, a funky front. He can line up and he can go beat the tackle on his own. And in the NFL, that's what you need to be able to do, because you can't scheme up a pass rush every time in the NFL. The best pass rushers in the NFL can get there on their own. The TJ Watts, the Will Anderson, they can get there on their own. And you're going to get a guy, the league right now is going through this deal of trying to make sure they're getting the right guys. You're going to get a guy that's going to be face of the program. He's going to represent the organization in a first-class manner. He's going to be a great locker room guy. He's going to come in, he's going to compete, but he's not going to be a headache, if that makes sense. He'll respect the veterans in the room, but he's also not going to back down. And he learns at a very high rate. You're going to get a guy also who's got some flexibility. We didn't play him on special teams, for obvious reasons. Sure. But he asked every week, can I get on kickoff? Can I get on kickoff return? Can I get on punt? Like, he wants to be a part of changing the game. And every week I would tell him, no, get out of my face. But, at that level, he's going to be able to do some things that, we saw in practice, or we saw in, workouts that he's going to be able to show. He's a guy that can play on special teams. He's a guy that can play, on third down. I tell a funny story, Coach Seymour, and we're going through the preseason, and Mike's a phenomenal athlete, and he can drop into coverage. He can, rush the passer, and defensively they were putting in all these schemes where, well, let's drop Mike into coverage and let him get an interception. And I said, every time Mike Green drops into coverage and we don't get a sack, somebody's going to get fired. So we have 5 coaches on defense. So you got 5 times to do it before the whole staff is gone. Let him rush the passer. Let somebody else drop. So we didn't show all of his skill set, because obviously he was, dominant at rushing the passer. But right. He's going to be a guy that has an unbelievable skill set in the NFL. They will be able to rush him because they'll have another guy on the other side that can rush. He'll be able to do some special teams, and he's going to represent the organization in the right way. And I'm so happy for him, because in today's game, he could have left, after, 2 years ago and went and made a whole lot of money. But he wanted to stay and dominate the competition. He wanted to stay and win a championship. That piece of college football that everyone thinks is gone, it's not. It's in Mike Green. It's in those type of players that, yeah, the money's great, but what I have here, or the opportunity I have here, is greater than what someone can pay me right now. And for that, I'm forever indebted and grateful for his ability to see past a few dollars and see what ultimately no one can take away from him. No one's going to remember how much NIL he made in college or didn't make. But he'll forever be a Sun Belt champion. He'll forever be the player of the year in the Sun Belt. He'll forever be a first-round draft pick. There's no history books for NIL, money made. There's nothing for that. And don't get me wrong, I don't think NIL is bad, and I think these kids have a right to it. But sometimes it can't replace what true college football is really about, which is making your mark on history, changing a culture or a fan base, and ultimately doing something that no one will ever be able to take away from him.
Well, patience certainly paid off. I've been asking for Coach for coming on for a long time, and I usually only 20, 25 minutes. You almost gone 40. Really appreciate it, Coach. I will ask to come on right before the season starts if we got time. I know you're going to New Orleans in July. We'll see if you can carve out a few minutes when practice gets going in August. Really appreciate your time. Congratulations on the new gig. He is the head coach of the Southern Miss Golden Eagles. He's Charles Huff. Really appreciate your time. Try to get a little bit of off time here, a little bit of family time. All right. They deserve it. All right. You got a lot of kids. And so, try to enjoy a little bit of the off season before it gets going later on this summer. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Coach.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. To the top.